Not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you. Well, let's talk it through here, me and you. Let's keep it real honest.
Hello, good morning, or afternoon, or evening, whatever time you're listening to this. Good day, night, good time. I'm going to start with a update on the bone marrow biopsy today, just because I had asked you guys to pray about that last week, and a lot of people texted me about it. So if you already know, skip ahead. But basically, thank you all so much for your prayers. The biopsy went terrible, so I don't want to say that the prayers didn't work, but feel like they didn't work. I don't blame you guys. I don't blame God. But that was an experience that I never, ever, 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 ever want to go through ever again in my life. But the short version is the sedative didn't work, the pain meds didn't work, and the numbing meds didn't work. And it's a very short procedure. Like they did a CT along with it, which made it more of like a 10 to 15 minute procedure, but like the biopsy itself only takes like 5 minutes, but it takes like an hour to prep, and then you're just like waiting and waiting and waiting for the room and the doctor, and then you go in and it doesn't take so significantly long. So that, I guess it's nice that it was quick. But I was in significant pain and highly anxious. And like literally when the doctor like used a little drill to like force the needle down into my bone, I just like screamed and flinched, and the doctor was like, "Oh no, can you feel that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he freaked out and was like yelling for the nurse, and the nurse ran over and he's like, "Did you not give her the medicine?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I did give her the medicine." And I was like, it was straight out of Grey's Anatomy. Like you cannot make this up. So anyway, I have filed a complaint with the hospital, and I am currently arguing with them about what portions of this experience I'm willing to be billed for. It's a whole hot mess. But I start with that little story time to get into my topic today, which is, why do we ask people how they are? Because talking to people about this biopsy has yielded, I guess, first of all, having the biopsy at all has caused a lot of people to check in on me, which is great. That's lovely. I think you absolutely should check on your friends and family members on a regular basis. But it's also yielded a lot of different reactions that has me asking, like, why do we ask people how they are? Like, I feel like over time, how are you has just become another way to say good morning or good afternoon. Like in general, when you walk into a room, you say, "Hi, how are you?" And you expect the person to say, "I'm fine, and you?" And them to say, "I am fine," or "good," or whatever, and then just move on. Like it's small talk. But I feel like with us therapy generations, when we ask, "How are you?" we really want to know, and we now understand that "how are you" is a question. And the answer, if it's honest, could be long. And "how are you" really and truly opens up like a longer and a deeper conversation. So I feel like if you don't have the time and space to give to somebody, if they're not doing well, then you shouldn't be asking how they are. You should just say, "Hi," end it there. "Good day, nice weather we're having," whatever it is. And I think about this because shout out to Denise, who like when I told her about the biopsy, like all she said was something to the effect of, "I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry you had such a bad experience. Like, I know you and I were talking about, like, she knows, like, I was on the phone with her, like, agonizing over, like, who to bring with me. I mean, you guys heard last week, like, I was very anxious about it. I was very, very, very highly, like, anxious going into it. And so to have it go so badly, and then I had a literal panic attack when I came out of it, and like 3 nurses had to come over and hold me down, and they're all just like, "Oh, you're okay, it's over." But then they all kept saying, like, "This is so weird, this has never happened before, nobody's ever reacted this way." And that just made me feel crazy. And I had talked to a friend of mine that works in the medical field, and she was like, "Well, didn't they, like, after they gave you the sedative, didn't they, like, talk to you? They're supposed to ask a series of questions to, like, make sure that it took effect." And I was like, "Nope, she literally put the medicine in the IV and walked away." And then same thing with the numbing needle. Like, the doctor told me, like, "All right, I'm putting the numbing needle in, now you're gonna feel that, and then you'll be numb." And I was like, "Cool." And so, color me surprised when a minute later I feel another needle going much deeper, and I'm like, guess I'm not numb. But he did not, like, tap around the area or, like, poke it with other sharp objects to, like, say, "Can you feel this? Can you feel this?" Like, there was no testing like that of any kind. And so, like, Denise knew the whole thing of, like, how anxious I was, and she's just like, "I'm so, like, I know, like, everybody was praying, and we were all, like, hoping this was going to just be quick and easy, and I'm so, so sorry that it did not go that way," and just kind of left it there. That was the end of the conversation. Whereas I had a different friend who said, "Okay, but it's over now, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I still like had a very traumatic experience." And she was like, "Well, at least it's over." Like, just so dismissive. And it really pissed me off. So I just stopped responding to that girl. Like, I just ended the conversation there. And then when she texted me the next day to ask, like, how my day was going, I was like, "It's not great. Like, I just got off the phone with patient relations filing a complaint with the hospital." And she was like, "Oh shit, what did they do?" And I was like, "Did you not read my text yesterday that you were, like, super dismissive, just being like, 'Oh, well, it's over'?" And so I sent her, like, a very, very, very long text, like, detailing the experience step by step. And then she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, nobody should have to go through that." And so just, like, a tip for everybody listening: validating people's feelings is really, really easy. All you have to do is repeat back what you heard them say. This is actually a hostage negotiation technique. I think they call it mirroring, where, like, you just repeat kind of the end of a phrase or sentence that somebody says because it keeps them talking. So, like, if somebody says, for example, "I really like your sweatshirt," and you say, "My sweatshirt," they'll say, "Yeah, it's blue. Like, I really like that color." And you'll be like, "You really like the color blue?" And they'll be like, "Yeah." And they'll tell, like, some story about why they like the color blue or whatever. And it buys, for hostage negotiators, this buys time. Of course, this is not a hostage negotiation, but Chris Voss, who teaches the masterclass on hostage negotiation, his argument is that we're all in little negotiations all day, every day. So he says, if you want something from another person, you are in a negotiation. And it can be something as simple as, like, wanting your kid to clean up their room. Like, you're in a negotiation. And so one technique to, like, keep people talking is this mirroring thing. So I feel like if you have a friend that complains too much, the friend can be me, okay? If I'm talking to you and you feel like I'm complaining too much and you want to end the conversation, then when I am like, "The biopsy went terrible," you can be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry the biopsy went terrible." And I'll be like, "Thank you." And then we'll move on. But if you say it a question, right? If I say the biopsy went terrible and you say it went terrible, you now mirrored with a question, and I'm going to, like, dive into the story more. That's the number one thing that I am looking for in most of my conversations, is to have my feelings validated, because I feel like my entire life, my parents were just constantly crushing my feelings and telling me that I was being dramatic So I like gravitate toward people that validate my feelings, and I don't think that they crush my feelings on purpose. But it's even like my dad called to like ask how I was doing, and I was like, not great, because none of the meds worked, and I was getting kind of worked up. And he like, if I am not calm and chill and boring, my dad does not want to talk to me. Like, he doesn't want to talk to me when I'm excited in a good mood. He doesn't want to talk to me when I'm in a bad mood. He doesn't want to talk to me when I'm sad or mad. Like, he literally only wants to speak to me if I'm like, nice weather we're having. So I'm just like, why are you speaking to me ever? Because he literally called and I was like not doing great because like all these things that I just told you guys. And he was like, sounds like they didn't give you enough medicine. And I was like, nope, they did not. And he's like, well, it's over now. And I'm like, uh-huh. And he's like, so you're doing fine now? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, all right, that's all I wanted. Hangs up the phone. And then he calls again the next day and asks me the same question. So I just said that I'm fine. And he said, okay, cool. And like hung up. And I'm literally like, why did you even call me? What did you want? What was the purpose? Because you called so that I would say that I'm fine. So you could like, I did a good deed. I checked on someone. But like, if I said that I'm not fine, what are you going to do? Right? Like, you're not going to come over. You're not going to comfort me. You're not going to go to the hospital and yell at people. Like, so what do you care if I'm fine or not? Because you're not going to do anything if I'm not fine. And I am guilty of this too. Before anyone thinks that I'm like sitting here on my high horse, like thinking that I'm so perfect, like I'm absolutely guilty of the same thing. Literally the same day that I had this conversation with my dad, I was in a work meeting, and I host our community events at work. So there's one woman at work that always shows up to these events 5 minutes early. And so almost every single time I have to make awkward small talk with the same woman because I join the meetings early to test the screen share and make sure that everything is test, volume and make sure everything's working as it's supposed to. So I get in the meeting and then she joins the meeting and I was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And she said, do you mind if I give you a longer answer? And quite frankly, I did mind because I was about to start an event and a whole bunch of other people were joining the meeting shortly. But I was like, well, it would be rude to say no. Also, I wasn't looking at her because I was testing the screen share. So I like closed down the screen share, popped back over to Teams. And I'm like, yeah, of course you can take more time. Like, what's going on? And then she was telling me about how she had to put her dog down the other day and started sobbing. And as you all know, I am not an animal person, so I cannot relate. Not that I don't think it's sad. Like, I understand that it's sad, but I just mean in the same way that like I have never lost anyone close to me to death. Like I have lost people that I have loved in terms of like breakups. I've been through a lot of friend breakups and those have been like really hard, but I don't know anyone that has died. And I don't, that was close to me. Sorry. I mean, like I have grandparents that have died, but I didn't have relationships with them. But same thing where like, I've never had a pet. Like and even now that my parents have a pet, I'm very like, that dog is not part of the family to me. He's like a foreign stranger because I'm just not an animal person. So I'm not the person that I think anyone is going to call when they have to put their dog down because like they're like, she has not been through it. She can't empathize. She doesn't know what's going on. So I was definitely struggling to like be on Teams with this woman that was sobbing about her dog. And I decided to just like use the skill and I just mirrored. And she was like, he really was a part of the family. And I was like, he really was a part of the family. And she's like, yeah. And he had a long life. He had a good life. And I was like, it's great that he had a good life. And then she started telling me about how she's got a friend of hers staying with her. And I was like, that's great. I don't think that anyone should be alone when they're going through a loss like this. But I think she felt better. And then more people joined the meeting and we kind of had to tell the story a couple times. And then we were able to like shift into like what we were all there to meet for. But I did talk to her again the next day, and she like appreciated like having been given the time and space and like not being dismissed up front, but with like dealing with this heavy thing that like she needed to cry in that moment, and like we gave her the space to do that. And I feel like crying makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Generally it does not make me uncomfortable, but in a work setting it does. Like I'm like, weird, this is a work meeting, why are you crying? But you know, I opened up the floor to say, like, how are you doing? You know, and I should have just said, hi, good to see you. Moved on. And I think that is something that not enough people consider. Like, I remember when I was in high school managing the boys' track team, like, one of the coaches was also my math teacher. But he only taught me for a semester. So like, but he was the coach for like 2 or 3 years that I managed the track team. So like I had a relationship with him as a coach, like before he was my teacher, and then he was my teacher. And then I had a relationship as the coach, like after he was my teacher. And so this man, unfortunately, knew every single detail of my 16, 17-year-old life. And I vividly remember like multiple times that like he'd be like, hey, how are you doing? And I would just shake my head and be like, you don't want to know. And just like dramatically walk away because my life was so dramatic and some boy didn't love me or whatever it was. My ex-boyfriend brought his new girlfriend into the tent at a track meet and like I lost my shit. But there was this one day that he like took a step back and he's like, Samantha, if I didn't want to know, I wouldn't ask. And I wish that I had been able to appreciate that at the time. But I was very like, you're old, you won't understand. He was like literally 24. He was a baby. This man was fresh out of college and had no business working at a high school. Oh my gosh, what a mess. He was great. I hope he's well. But I just wish that I had the knowledge that I have now to know like how profound that was. That he was like, I'm not going to ask how you're doing if I don't care about how you're doing. Like, of course I care and I want to hear and I want to like sit and know the things. And I do want to acknowledge that if you're a person that like is not good with emotions and you can't handle people like crying or being angry or sad or whatever, that doesn't mean that you don't care. I do think that it's helpful to ask yourself what you want from the conversation first. Like before you say, how are you? Ask yourself, like, what do I want from this person? Is this the start of a meeting at work and I just want to make some small talk to pass the time until everyone's here? Then I need to be like, it's cold in here, or talk about the weather, or like something generic like that. Or if it's like, I want to know if this person is physically well, I just want a yes or no. Frame the question that way. Or I want to know if this person needs anything from me. I want to know if there's something that I can do to help them. That's also a different question. Like, hey, do you need anything? Is there anything I can get you? Also a different question than how are you? So like if you're more of like an acts of service person, go with the how can I help you or can I help you with anything route. It's also interesting because we have to remember that like everybody is looking for different things. Like I know a few weeks ago I talked about the golden rule and how stupid it is because it's like in order to treat others as you want to be treated, that assumes that everybody wants to be treated the same way. Where like I feel like a disconnect that like I have with the rest of my family is like I don't ask a lot of questions because I am a sharer. So like all you have to do is ask me how I'm doing or how my day went and I'm going to talk for 30 minutes. I mean like hello, I have a podcast. But if you ask me how I'm doing and I say fine, that means I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't mean I'm fine. I'm never fine. Like I am always happy or sad or like, something in between, but I'm never fine. Like fine is my leave me alone. I don't want to discuss it. And I feel like most of my family is like that, But the rest of my family, like if you're like, how are you doing? And they say fine. And you're like, you don't sound fine. I don't think you're fine. And you ask 75 more times, like then they'll let it out. And I honestly will do the same thing because my mom does this to me all the time. And it's just like, if you poke enough, I will answer just to get you to shut up because you're annoying me. But that's very different from me sharing with you because I want you to know. And so because I am like that, I don't poke. Like if I ask somebody how they're doing and they say fine and they leave it at that, I leave it at that. Even if they don't sound fine or they don't look fine, I am not the type of person to press because I don't want to have to drag it out of you. Like I want you to know that I am a safe person to share with, and I want you to feel connected enough to me. I want to be a person that you want to share things with. And I feel like if you're not openly sharing things with me, then I'm not a person that you want to share with. And like, that's sad, but I'm not gonna force you or drag it out of you. But I really do feel like one of the core needs of all humans is to belong and to feel seen and feel heard and feel known. And I feel like one of the steps to making other people feel seen and heard and known is to really listen to them and sit with them and meet them where they're at. And I think it's something as simple as doing the mirroring thing. Of course, it can be overdone, right? Like, I've worked in many different customer service settings, and so I know the tricks and I know how to bullshit, but I also know when I'm being bullshitted. So that's annoying. So like the patient relations department at the hospital, like the lady that I have been talking to, like she is so trained because she doesn't even let me get a word in. It's like as soon as I call and I verify my name and birthday, she is like, Samantha, you are the one that had the traumatic bone marrow biopsy. Oh my goodness. I read the email you sent to your doctor and the notes from all of the calls, and I am so sorry. Like we have not found a satisfactory resolution for you. And I know that you spoke with the supervisor of the radiology department this morning, and she was extremely rude and just had a tone that made you feel like she didn't care at all and was very like, y'all, this woman. So they did like an investigation and they asked all the people, they allegedly talked to the doctor and all the nurses involved and whatever and interviewed everybody. And then the nurse supervisor of radiology calls me and she leaves me a message. And she says, like in this tone, she says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, title, blah, blah, blah. I'm calling to speak to Samantha to see how you're doing and I guess address your grievance with us. If you want to give me a call back." So like that's literally how she said it. So like I call her back like already expecting the attitude. And she's like, "So you're fine?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am fine now." And she said, "Okay, well, they gave you the medicine. I don't know why it didn't work." And I'm like, "That's all you got for me?" And she's like, "Yep, that's all I got. Don't know why it didn't work." And I'm like, "Seriously? That's what you called me to say?" And she was like, "We actually gave you twice the amount that we usually give. So I don't know why it didn't work. There's nothing in your chart that would say that it didn't work." And it's like, look, y'all, I know that she's not going to admit to anything. Like they can't admit fault because then they allow themselves to be sued. And like when you go get procedures done, you have to sign 8 million consent forms so that you can't sue them. Like I'm aware of that. And she's aware of that. But it's like, there is a way to acknowledge my feelings without admitting fault to anything, like she could have said, "I see here that like the medicine was definitely administered. Clearly there's something going on where the dose was not high enough. So I am so sorry that you were fully awake and alert your entire procedure," because that is a fact So, like, you can admit to facts. You don't have to say, I'm sorry that the nurse did not correctly discern whether you were loopy or not and just walked away. I, wasn't asking for all that, but you could have said, like, something, which is why I had to go back to the relations department and I'm, like, still fighting. But it's the kind of thing where there's a happy medium, because if you do it too much, like, so back to the lady in the patient relations department, like, it's just like, she knows the drill and she knows the thing to where she almost like is so sweet and lays it on so thick that I feel like she doesn't care, because I know that it's her job. And that was the issue that I had when I used to work in a call center. It's like, you just get the script and you're like, I'm so sorry to hear that your sandwich was missing a piece of cheese. That's really, that would ruin my lunch. Like, no, it was like, why are you calling? Get off the phone. But I just do think that it is helpful to, like, acknowledge what you are hearing. Also, like, just really in any conversation, like, in a similar way to, like, when you meet somebody new, you're supposed to repeat their name, I think, like 3 to 5 times back in the conversation to lock it into your memory. It's that similar kind of thing where when somebody is talking, like, repeat things that they have said back to them, both to let them know that you are listening well, and also on your end to help you actually listen well and not just think about the next thing that you're going to say, or like waiting for their next break in the conversation. Short episode this week because it's really late on Tuesday night and I'm very tired. So moving right into the movie recommendation of the week. It is The Hunger Games prequel, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I literally just got back from this movie and it is epic. Like, oh my gosh, I'm such a fan. I loved and hated it so much at the same time. It is a roller coaster. It is a roller coaster series of anxiety attacks. Like, oh my gosh, I was like internally yelling at the screen the whole movie. I was so anxious. But, like, I loved it. Like, I think it is brilliant. I think the character development it's truly genius. Like, it is done so well. And I was very, very, very impressed. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd because there were some things that I found confusing. So I'm going to need to watch it again. And also there were some motivations for certain characters that I needed to be stronger. Also, I never cried. I really wanted to cry. But nothing that happened moved me enough to cry. But I did. I haven't watched the Hunger Games trilogy in a while, so maybe I need to go back and watch those. But I felt like this one was way more violent and just way darker. And just like, oh yeah, like sad. I was like, oh yikes. Like, it's just the whole movie. I was like, it can't get worse. And it just kept getting worse. But like, it's still... It really, 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 for those that don't know, it's this, like, the origin story of President Snow from the trilogy. And if you happen to be totally unfamiliar with the Hunger Games series, like, President Snow is the villain. Like, he is the mean, angry villain that everybody hates in the trilogy. So this is, like, his origin story set 1,000,000 years ago. So he's, like, a teenager and he's the protagonist, and it's just fascinating to see how he becomes the man that, like, we know from the other movies, mostly because, like, he's so sweet and wonderful for so much of the movie that you're constantly asking, like, how are we going to get from here to there? And you might miss it, Pay attention. You can't miss it. Viola Davis, 10 out of 10. Like, I mean, she never does not give 1,000% to all her performances, but like that woman blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. Okay, bye. See you next time.
Not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, hear me and you, let's keep it real honest.